You need to know this. The concerns raised by yesterday's 5.9 earthquake here in the Virginia, D.C. area are still reverberating long after the quake itself, and a few small aftershocks are over. Today, schools and government buildings are closed in Washington, D.C. out of fear of aftershocks, and damage has been discovered at the National Cathedral and the Washington Monument. It was the largest earthquake to strike Virginia in well over 100 years, and near the epicenter is the North Anna Nuclear Power Station, rated the 7th most likely nuclear power plant in America to receive core damage in the event of an earthquake. But due to budget cuts, the quake sensors at the plant were removed back in the 1990s. Luckily, diesel backup generators kicked in to prevent a meltdown after the plant lost power during the earthquake, but only one of the 4 of them failed. Failed? Only one? Even luckier, the plant was built to withstand a 6.1 earthquake. Yesterday's was a 5.8, meaning we were about that close to suffering a Fukushima-like nuclear disaster near the nation's capital. So will this quake serve as a wake-up call? Here to offer his take on this is Paul Gunter, Director of Reactor Oversight, the Reactor Oversight Project at Beyond Nuclear. Paul, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks again for having us, Tom.
Great to have you. What's the latest from the North Anna plant?
Well, I think that right now the concern is what kind of damage happened at the plant. We're going to be monitoring this. What we understand is that the plant is undergoing some surveillance now. I think without a question there has been structural damage to the plant. We're most concerned about a buried pipe that carries radioactive water underneath the plant. There's probably 8 to 10 miles of buried pipe carrying radioactive tritium and other isotopes. And that could very well have ruptured, broken, and is leaking into groundwater right now.
Is there any evidence that it is or isn't? Is this speculation and concern?
You know, we saw when the New Madrid earthquake happened back in 2005 that a nuclear power plant in Illinois, hundreds of miles away, the Dresden nuclear power station, had a broken pipe as a result of that earthquake. So, you know, this plant was 4 miles away from the epicenter. So I would say without question there's going to be structural damage to things like pipes, concrete retaining walls, things like that.
Right. One of the things that I read in the paper today, and you confirm for me if this is true or not, that more or less 100 years ago, we had an earthquake here in the D.C. area that was, or in Virginia, that was between 7 and 8. They didn't have the Richter scale back then, but you know, it was ringing church bells, and they had ways that we can infer how severe it was. It was worse than 6.1. If that's the case, why on earth would anybody design, build, and license a nuclear power plant in this area for a maximum 6.1 earthquake?
Well, even more of a concern is back when this plant was originally being sited in the 1960s, Virginia Electric Power Company actually falsified reports to the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission and eventually got 12 counts of making false statements to the federal government where they said there wasn't even an earthquake fault in the area. So
12 counts as in they were charged with 12 crimes, you mean?
12 counts, and you know, unfortunately they only got a $60,000 fine for making false statements to the federal government. But this is the kind of cost-benefit analysis that benefits the corporation and potentially puts the public safety at great risk. I mean, right now, the whole idea of earthquake assessment is pretty much guesswork. Yeah. And if you look at what the NRC was saying back in 1989 and then reassessments in 2008, there was a 35% increase for this particular plant just in the risk of having a core melt from a core accident. Wow. So the risks are going up.
Speaking of the risks going up, my understanding, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that this plant draws its power from a lake that is created by a dam that's on a river. I don't know the name of the river. And that dam is one of the, we talk about our crumbling infrastructure, that dam has been identified as one of the most at-risk dams in the United States. If that dam goes and that lake drains down to river level, will that nuclear power plant have water to cool itself, or will we see a Fukushima-type incident there?
You know,
particularly given that we got a tornado passa, or a hurricane rather,
right,
that may well hit us in 3 or 4 days. And if that dam suffered structural damage from the earthquake, and then you dump another couple 100 million gallons of water from, you know, anyhow.
Yeah, we saw a report this morning in the Washington Post that the dam, which is a dam on the North Anna River, which then backs up for the Lake Anna Reservoir, which provides the cooling water for these 2 very large reactors. That dam was inspected, and it was reported to have passed. But what they don't address in this inspection is that the American Association of Civil Engineers had given this particular dam and 142 others in Virginia a D- for being for upkeep and maintenance on this particular and very important piece of infrastructure. Right. So the question is you know, if in fact we get another challenge like a hurricane and a heavy surge of water from rain, if in fact this dam can withhold such a challenge.
Well, and then the question, if this dam goes, does that mean that the nuke goes?
Well, right now the nuke is shut down, and very likely the North Anna plant will not be operational when Hurricane Irene comes in.
But
so
doesn't it still need power to keep the waste cool and to keep
the cooling water is at a minimum with the plant shut down. You know, it's a big difference between having that plant operational and the plant and at a shutdown level. So
this is not such a concern.
So I think that we have more margin of safety now with the plant shut down. Actually, all nuclear power plants are safest when they're shut down. So I think that's what we're trying to get at.
The great axiom. What's the latest out of Fukushima?
Well, today's news is that the authorities have confirmed that hot particles of cesium-137 3 times the so-called permissible level have now been found 125 miles away from the site. So this is another indication of an ever-expanding, ever more contaminating nuclear event that will not only present a threat in terms of distance, but also time.
That kind of cesium is, if I remember my periodic table right, about 2.5 times heavier than iron. You know, how does a metal that, you know, we're not talking about, you know, vaporized iodine here. We're talking about a metal, you know, particles. How do they get that far away from a reactor?
Explosions. And what we have now been able to confirm through the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission is that the initial explosions at Fukushima were very likely ejections of core material into the atmosphere and a vaporization of some portions of those cores. And so, you know, we remain concerned that this is, as it has always been, a game of hide and go seek, where these particles are now seeking out to bioconcentrate and biomagnify in the biosphere.
Right. Yeah, a terrible thing. And cesium imitates potassium, right? It gets absorbed by the bones.
It goes to the muscle.
Muscle.
Yes.
Okay. Paul, thank you so much.
Thanks again.
Thanks for being with us. Yeah, there you go. Of course, the best way to prepare East Coast nuclear power plants for another earthquake is to close them all down. Time to ditch nuclear power, the most dangerous and the most expensive energy source on the face of the planet, for good.